Oh, hello. This is the 1.6 liter CVH out of my 1982 EXP Convertible. There's a few differences between this and the last 1.6 I pulled out. If you've seen it, I pulled out the 1.6 liter out of my Blue 82, and that's an AC car. So that alone has a few differences, but there's a couple other things that this has that doesn't, and vice versa. So I want to start with the coolant. For this car, for whatever reason, you can see that brass sensor. Normally, that's threaded into the block right there, but they insert this elbow, and then they tap that sensor onto it for your coolant. So coolant comes running out of that pore, and then down into this pipe, and then to this hose that goes to your heater core. Also going onto this pipe is this this tube that that serves as the coolant return for the intake manifold. Because on the bottom of the carbureted intake manifolds, they're designed to fill up with coolant. So as the motor gets running, warms up, it heats up the intake manifold. So for emissions and better burn, so they say. It's a little redundant in my mind, because with these engines running kind of hot, if you don't, with the factory thermostat and a few other factory designs, this entire motor runs awfully hot. But if you lower the thermostat and then do a couple other things, you can get them running a lot cooler, a lot more reliable. And this is definitely something I've been thinking about, because with these running hot, you're spewing hot coolant into your intake manifold, which is really making your intake manifold hot. So now you're stuffing hot air and hot fuel into your combustion chamber, making that even hotter, making the coolant hotter, and it's just an ongoing cycle. That only snowballs into serious issues. So, but still figuring out the best way to go about it, because the coolant that's in the head has to get out of the head. And aside from the pipe that they tapped into where the sensor normally goes, the only way to get it out is through the coolant passage of the intake manifold right between the intake for cylinders 2 and 3. And thus why there's a return line at the bottom of the manifold. But until I figure that out, we'll move on. Another big difference is this throttle linkage. You'll only find this on the non-AC cars, and I don't know if you'll find it on all of the non-AC cars. A few of my non-AC cars have this. A few don't, and I'm not sure if that's because they didn't come with them originally, or if someone hadn't removed them. You can see I can move this lever back and forth, and it doesn't change my throttle when my throttle's at nothing. I open up my throttle, now it moves that shaft with it. So I'm not sure if this is for not AC, for the cruise control application. I reckon you'd have your cruise control vacuum diaphragm module off to the side, and then it pulls a line or whatever that moves this back and forth to control your maximum throttle, which is entirely possible, and then your vacuum controls the rest of it. But I'm not sure, because I only have I have 2 cruise control cars, but one of them is the electric conversion, so the cruise control is no longer there. It just has the steering wheel. So I'm not sure. But this does put a lot more spring tension on the throttle arm, throttle shaft. So if you like that, you can leave that there. If you don't like it, you can remove it. The Ford manuals say that all the non-AC cars have this, and they don't specify whether it's this cruise control cars or not. And they all have this little box on there, and even the cars that don't have this arm and shaft may still have this little box for it at the end of the throttle shaft. But yeah, that's about it there. For whatever reason, this one has a black timing cover and a black valve cover. Someone painted over it black again, but it was originally black, and now it's black again. And I'll sand it down to nothing and make it black again. Yes. And it's weird because my blue cars, they all have the blue timing cover. You can see that hiding back there. Yep, blue timing cover and blue valve covers. And my red cars, some of them are blue and blue, and some of them are black and black. So I'm not sure what designates which one's what. Some of them also have a black air box, or at least a black lid. One of my high outputs has a black lid with a sticker that says high output, because it was an early high output model, so they put stickers on over the black cover. But I don't know yet why they color designate these, because I don't believe this is a high output, because it just has the exhaust manifold. It's got a standard carb, and I'm sure if I take the cam out, it's normal cam. And I don't think it's got the high dome pistons. It would have the normal dome pistons, which is pretty good. It's not incredible, but it's pretty good. This one also has the steel alternator mount. If you've seen my video on alternator mounts, this is the one that I show in the video. One of them, at least. So like I said, this is the steel one. It's got a big steel bracket that goes halfway down the block, just below the head, or maybe it does mount to the head. It can, but this one isn't. It was mounted to the head, and someone removed the bolt for it. So maybe someone had the head off. We'll find out later. And it's got a steel arm that holds on the alternator. And this, like I said, is the lower mount alternator because it's not an AC car. The AC cars have the alternator mounted higher up, right about here. So then you can fit the AC pump right in the frame of the video right there. So there's that. I'll have a video on how to remove, delete these smog pumps, air pump systems. Because if you've replaced your catalytic converter, you won't need these anymore. These are for the extremely inefficient catalytic converters of the 80s. They had to pump air through them just so exhaust could go through them. It's ridiculous. But most EXPs are emissions exempt because they're so old that you can usually remove these among your other emissions provisions without any issues. By removing this and rerouting the coolant lines, you can shed about 50 pounds. Because like this pump alone weighs 5 to 10, and then it's got another big metal vacuum module at the other end of the hoses for it. I don't have them on hand, but like I said, it's got a giant metal vacuum diaphragm distributor thing. That again weighs about 5 pounds, and then you have another couple different vacuum diaphragm plungers or whatever, and they weigh a few pounds each. And then if you reroute the coolant lines, you get rid of this massive steel hanger. So what Ford does is the coolant lines up front here, you can see those two metal pipes, they all go to the same place back into the water pump. But the big one on the bottom goes to the radiator, just in front of the car. And then that tube, it sends a hose that goes underneath the block, mounted to that metal bracket, comes back up from underneath the oil pan, and then goes into the heater core, just like this hose does from the intake manifold. And it's ridiculous that metal bracket alone weighs 10-15 pounds, and then the metal pipe that they put on it is a few more pounds. So what I do is I take that off, I run a rubber hose from that nipple, I bring it out this way, there we go, and then I route it inside the motor mount, bracket or cup, cradle, whatever you want to call it. Run it then through that. I come out the back side, and without this air pump being there, I can have my hose come through in this place that it takes up and goes straight into the heater core. And you can do that with all these engines and all the cars, whether you have AC or not. It just having AC or not just moves your heater core a few inches over to the passenger side. Or, oh, I'm sorry, it moves it to the driver's side, because the heater core is in the center of the car. So it moves everything over about 6 inches or whatever. Yeah, that's about all there is to it. It's got an insane amount of vacuum lines, and like I said, this one doesn't even have AC or cruise control. So we'll be removing a lot of these. The only vacuum lines I need are the one that goes to the distributor, this guy. I had to borrow the distributor for my blue car. You also need a line that goes to your brake booster, and then you'll have a line coming off the carb here. It's this big tube that goes to your evaporator core, or sorry, not evaporator core, evaporator canister. There you go. I'll also go through and I'll remove the fuel pump, because the last thing you want is that to fail and you getting fuel inside your oil. Waters it down, thins out the oil, and now your bearings go to hell, among other things. And by removing that, you can also remove these hard fuel lines and replace them with soft rubber ones. These make it really hard to take the valve cover on and off. So removing those helps a lot. Removing this pump sheds about 8 pounds after you put in an electric one. And you can mount your electric one here on this side of the intake manifold, or maybe you want to mount it over here. Anywhere is fine, or you can mount it on the firewall, whatever. I have a video on it. That's about all there is to it. You can also EGR delete. I have a video on that. And I will soon have a video on these different oil caps and valve covers. Because this oil cap is different than all my other ones, not just in the... Yeah, I guess just in the design of the top, the actual cap that you spin with your hands. It's a nice one. This one seals pretty good. My other ones, I'll show you here. Most EXPs come with this guy. the six-sided one, and these don't really seal worth a darn ever. I think how these are supposed to be, I think this outer collar, I'm going to call it, it's all one piece of rubber, but this outer ring is supposed to be sticking down lower than the inner one, but it doesn't. So I'm sure that's why it doesn't seal worth a darn. It's relying on the inner one, and that's only one seal instead of two. So these hardly ever seal worth a darn. Same with these guys. They have the same design on the backside. They just changed the top. And some of these on my cars are blue, and I think a few of them are black. This is my first yellow one. It came off of the 83 EFI motor. But I'll fuss with that later, I suppose. That's about all there is to this one. Like I said, it's not a high output motor yet. It might be in the future. My plan is to rebuild this so I have a drop-in motor for my other cars. Should I have to do, I don't know, like a head gasket, replace a cam, or full rebuild, I'll just have one of these on standby. So whenever we have to do anything with a different motor, spend an hour and a half, yank it out, spend about 45 minutes, put this one in, and then you're good to go. But we'll leave it at that for now, guys, and we'll see you later.